This video will look at the economic changes in the UK. So let's begin with a rough drawing of the United Kingdom. The country that we'll be looking at in this example. So the first thing that we looked at when we studied the UK was the economic change, the changes that the United Kingdom has gone through over time. So to begin with, we had many people involved in primary industries, and that is to do with industries of taking raw materials from the ground or the sea. And there was large coal mining industries which took place particularly in the north of England, in Wales and in the southwest in Cornwall. Agriculture, farming, fishing, forestry are all involved in primary industries. And then we shifted to a secondary industry where many people, due to the Industrial Revolution, left the countryside and moved to the cities for job opportunities working in manufacturing and making products. Then there was another shift, changes in the UK's employment structure, and we moved towards a more service-based sector. So we had many people providing services, which is represented by my beautiful telephone there. So we once had many people employed in primary, then we shifted towards secondary, majority of the population employed here, and then as the country developed, more investment in various different services, this sector evolved and people earned more money, so had more available funds to spend on services, which drove up the demand for other employment opportunities in this sector. And then today we have the development of a new type of industry which has been around sort of since the 1980s, so perhaps to some of you that's not so new, but it's sort of the knowledge economy, represented by my amazing light bulb on my laptop here. So to do with research and development, that's called ternary. So what we find now is our employment structure is made up primarily of tertiary jobs. We have a very, very small secondary sector, tiny amount in the primary sector. Many jobs were replaced by machinery, large-scale commercial farming, and we have this new emerging sector to do with science and research. Within that, we have the development of science parks, and we looked at one example which is found down here in South Cambridge. So I'm going to put C, in Cambridge City. And Cambridge Science Park, which will be represented by my amazing test tube here, is located here for a number of reasons. They're not tied to raw materials, so they could locate anywhere if they chose to, but they've located on the edge of the city, so they're close to the university, they've got access to the skilled workers, and they want to attract the skilled workers to their science park. They've settled in these pleasant semi-rural surroundings, there's space to expand and close to main routes so people can get in and out easily. Another feature of this industry, employment components that we now have in the UK, is the development of business parks. And we have looked close to us, down in Portsmouth, when we studied our city of Portsmouth, which is on another video, you can revise. We looked at Lakeside. And Lakeside has the European headquarters of IBM, and you will also find Porsche here. It's located next to the lake, hence its name, just northwestern part of the city, close to the M27, great access for people moving in and out, good collection of businesses. So the idea is that with the business parks and science parks, you've got these groups together and they can share ideas, and then developments will happen more easily, and it also encourages the multiplier effect. People are employed, particularly in Portsmouth, which needed it after the loss of jobs due to shipbuilding disappearing. Drives other jobs in the local areas. People have money, they spend it in other businesses, and so on. So why did this change happen? There are a number of reasons, And one of those large reasons is to do with how connected we are with the rest of the world today. The world isn't isolated. Our communication has become brilliant. Excuse the horrendously drawn world map here. We are communicating much more easily, so we are all connected really, really easily now through the internet. And transportation developments have also improved. So globalization, the connections we have with the rest of the world, have enabled us to obtain manufactured goods from, for example, Southeast China at a fraction of the cost that they would have been to generate those products in our own country. Lower wages, increased competition from those countries, so many of the factories have closed and moved overseas, and makes it much more competitive. The communication has enabled these sectors to develop. So, the developments of programs such as Zoom, Skype, other internet-based programs, so that these have really taken off in the UK. Finance and banking, which is huge, it brings significant wealth into the United Kingdom. So there's some of the significant changes that we've seen in the UK. Moving on to the next part that we looked at was the impact of an industry on the physical environment. Now, there is a separate video you can look at in more detail, but we looked at here in the South Downs, we studied Rolls-Royce. And in Rolls-Royce, we had a factory that was relocated into the South Downs. And this modern factory, so we do have some manufacturing in the UK, we can't say there's no manufacturing, we do, and we often have very specialised manufacturing. So these Rolls-Royce really expensive luxury cars are made in the South Downs factory. The roof is the largest green living roof in Europe. It improves biodiversity, and also when it rains it intercepts and therefore reduces flooding. So there's less flooding. They planted over 400,000 trees and plants on site, increasing biodiversity, decreasing the risk of flooding in the location. However, there's always a however. We saw that they built in the South Downs, so we've lost a greenfield site. But traffic congestion has increased in the local area, disturbing wildlife and decreasing the quality of the air in that location. So it's an example of how modern industry can be more environmentally sustainable. The design of the building and the grounds has made it more environmentally sustainable with some limitations. Moving on, we then explored two contrasting areas of rural UK. And examined the area of population growth and population decline. So an area that has seen population grow is in South Cambridgeshire. And so we have seen population increase. So back to our little area of our science park. Here, population has grown largely due to migration. And that is internal, that means within the UK, people often leaving the city of Cambridge to go live in a semi-rural or rural location, and also international migrants from Eastern Europe who've come over to work in the local farming industries and construction industries and other industries you'll find in the area. So this has had consequences. Increase in population has driven up the demand for housing, and this has led to jobs in construction of housing, which is great. However, conversely, the demand for housing has pushed prices up. So locals are finding it very difficult to afford homes in the place that they lived. Another impact is that there is a very high percentage of people that own cars in the area. Because it's a rural setting, public transport is limited. 80% of cars, which leads to air pollution and traffic on those narrow country roads. So this is an area that is increasing in population. Some positives and some negatives in that area. Contrastingly, we looked at the Outer Hebrides up here on the west coast of Scotland. Most of the population live on the island of Lewis. What they have seen over the last sort of decade or so 2 decades is 50% of their population have gone. And many of those are young adults left and moved to the mainland to seek employment. As a result of those young people leaving, families leaving, it has led to schools, a number of schools closing. And so there's a limited amount of choice for schools in that location. Secondly, those people who would be employed would be earning money, contributing to taxes, which would then pay for services such as the ferries. But because there's less people there now, this increases the risk of these services going under and leaving the elderly. That's my elderly person here with a walking stick, relatively vulnerable, left behind. There are positives for the Outer Hebrides. They've seen a recent boom in tourism, so there's an income increasing for tourism, but because, it's a lovely camera, because the services are threatened, there's not really enough ferries, etc., to support them. So 2 contrasting areas of rural locations in the UK. Population decline and population growth. Then we move on to improvements and new developments in road, rail, infrastructure, port and airport capacity. So there's lots of transport available in the United Kingdom, but we appreciate that with population growth and the needs to develop and move forward, that there needs to be some changes in how our transport operates. And we looked at 4 examples of how transport is improving. One of the things that we studied was the HS2, which is going to run from London up to Manchester, a high speed 2. So this trains will run along here, and they will mean that the journeys from London to Manchester will be reduced to 60 minutes, so just an hour to get to Manchester, which is fantastic. It's projected to increase the UK's GNI by 15 billion. So the links between Manchester and London means that easier not so trade, but business talks, discussions, meetings, etc. could take place, and hopefully some of the wealth that's in the south will move up to the north. However, it is extremely expensive being able to buy all that land to build the train lines on, and the associated infrastructure and support network. It's really expensive, and people have been forced to move homes as a result. And really now, do we need this line? That's a question for you to consider. Now we have things such as Zoom and Teams, be able to do online meetings. You need to consider whether that's an effective use of trying to improve transport and also improve the division in the north and south of the country. So back to Portsmouth, down on the south coast. We looked at how the ports have been developed. So down by Portsmouth. We know that the port of Portsmouth is important for a number of reasons. And one of those is the trade and the goods that it allows us, imports and exports, that Portsmouth port allows us to bring into the UK. So here is my goods ship. Advantage of Portsmouth developing and improving their port, so they dredged it, which means to make it bigger, and so bigger ships can come in and we can get more goods into the country. There are bananas that are brought into the country. Over 70% of bananas that come into the UK are via Portsmouth docks, and it means that fresher fruit can get to the supermarkets quicker, so bonus for us when we're buying bananas from the supermarket. However, when you're dredging, which means digging out the base of the seabed to make it deeper, you have got impacts on the environment, and as a result it has destroyed fish habitats on the base of the seabed. So good things means bananas get quicker and fresher to the supermarkets. However, the fish and other sea life creatures have suffered. So we've had rail, we've had ports. Another form of transport, airports. Heathrow, just on the edge of London, west, we have Heathrow Airport. And here they're building the 3rd runway. Let's bring it out over here. So let's represent Heathrow with a lovely large plane. It will increase our capacity for passengers to come in and out of the country, which is significant. It will improve our economy, enable more international travel. However, if economy is doing well, it's usually the environment that will suffer, and aircraft are not known for their environmental positive impacts. So let's cross out that and put a sad face. Increase in air pollution as a result of fossil fuels burned by the aircrafts. So there's good things and bad things about all of these developments. It should help the economy of the country and improve local area economies as well, but the environment will suffer. Our fourth type of transport. So we've done ports, we've done trains, we have done planes. Last one is roads, and it's a really local example. Feltham. So Feltham Village, where we are, we have had a bypass. So around Feltham, traffic used to have to drive straight through the village, and now we have this really large road, which part of it's lifted up on stilts to go over the railway and the river. Takes people outside the village as they're coming along the A259 and takes them north of Bognor Regis up to Bursted. So this is great for us in the village and where our school is, because we don't have so much traffic anymore running through the village. And this, since it's been put in place, is actually reduced the air pollution, and actually the quality has improved. So for us, happy days. Unfortunately, it came at a cost, and a big cost. 30 million, well, it's 28.5, but it's 30 million is how much it cost to put this one road in, and it was 5 years late. Or it took 5 years and it was 1 year late. But we got it eventually. So good for us in the village in that it reduces the traffic congestion. So it makes it a more pleasant environment for Feltham, and it means that lorries and cars and other vans and businesses who need to use that transport don't have to go through the village at really slow speeds to then go off to Chichester, and it saves a good 30 minutes on your journey being able to go on this bypass that connects up to the one to Bognor Regis, which is fantastic. So I did talk about the North-South divide earlier. There is a division in our country, and it's about-ish, looks like that. It's not a straight line, it's a wiggly line, dividing the north from the south. And this is to do with economics. And you can look at various sets of data. I'm going to go with the average in wages. So the average yearly wages in the north are 19,000, whereas in the south it's 28,000. That's your average. Shows you huge, significant differences in income. And you could look at some other development data that would back that up as well. And this is largely due to the decline in the primary and secondary industries, the mining, the steel manufacture, other types of factories that were predominantly in the north. And when they closed, due to deindustrialisation, so the closure of those factories, we moved towards this tertiary sector, competition from abroad, that the north didn't have the same level of investment with services as the south did. And what we see today is this division between north and south. So how can this gap be closed? Well, one of those strategies is the HS2, which we've already talked about. Increasing the business links between the south and north, and hoping that the multiplier effect the work that happens here will then spread up into the north, and that will benefit the northern economy. We also have another strategy which can be used. So in Salford, they have built Media City, and BBC have located here, as well as some other television programme producers. And this direct single investment in regenerating this area, this derelict area of Salford, has now meant that it's produced hundreds of new jobs, particularly for media, but then it drives the multiplier effect, and it has had a knock-on influence on the surrounding areas, so it has been significantly positive. Limitations of that approach increases the wealth of those people employed, but it's one location, it's one place where this has been targeted. It's not going to solve the whole north-south divide. It will not improve everywhere in the north because it's one spot. Finally, we move into our last section about the UK, and that is our links to the rest of the world. So how do we sit with the rest of the world, and how is the UK connected? Communication is key. How are we communicating with the rest of the world, and how we're linked? So back in the days of telegrams and telephones, we now have, this is supposed to be a mobile phone, but that's horrendously drawn. We now have internet that connects us, and we can communicate very easily. Physically, you can move yourself, or people can move themselves and get to London and to Europe and to other countries and continents using planes, trains via the Channel, and also boats. So we are well connected for transport around the world. We have had significant influence on other countries around the world, and through the export of our culture. Largely due to when we were a colonial power and we sailed around the world and ruled large areas in different countries. So tea is a key part of our culture, as is the export of our sports, as my rugby ball, and also back to TV programmes and music. Our TV programmes and music are played all around the world. So think about Downton Abbey, The Crown, and that has influence on people around the globe. We are part of the Commonwealth. I'm just going to represent it by C. So it's a group of countries, 53 independent states, and it exists to improve the well-being of everyone. And we have the Commonwealth Games, there's sporting events, there's also meetings in which they discuss trade, and it's a really good trading opportunity to develop those and strengthen those links. And then finally, which is due to change, we are still, at the time of producing this, a member of the EU. We're just about to leave the EU. So the EU still is our main trading partner. And changes will happen when we leave. So we are leaving. So I'm going to cross that out. EU being our trading partner, importance for economics, exports and imports, providing migrants. People have free movement within the EU, and we're about to undergo a change in our immigration policy. So that will change. And so that's been important to the UK's economy, and will continue to be so. So watch this space and see how our links to Europe change in the future. So that is your UK case study. I hope you find that useful as an overview. It's a lot of information in one picture.